Well, what's your why? They start talking about people. They start talking about other people instead of themselves. They start thinking about things that are emotionally exciting, perhaps, and that's great. That's a very valuable and important aspect to approaching this concept of finding your why, but it misses the mark. The other part about it is it doesn't create a sense of ownership on your part, the person driving the actual mission. That's important. If you don't own it, if you don't have a deep-seated personal connection to it, and it's more about other people, your spouse, your kids, whatever, husband, wife, it doesn't have the same power as if you have a sense of true, genuine ownership yourself. And that's oftentimes missed when we're going after this concept of finding your why. So I want to give you 3 specific things that you can start working on right now, today, to get better clarity around this concept of what you've been calling your why. What's up, my friends? JT DeBolt with you today for the True Driven Podcast, the podcast for the few, the true, the driven, those of us who have aligned and united to become the True Driven. And I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time it is for you, no matter where you might be tuning in from on the Big Blue Marble. Thank you, as always, for joining me here. And by here, I'm talking about Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, YouTube, youtube.com/JT DeBolt. Perhaps my favorite of the 3, because that's where I can bring you additional content and more messages to deliver here for those of us that are the true driven, as we unite, as we come together and really start to transform ourselves, each other, and the world around us in this movement called the True Driven Movement. I'm thrilled and excited to be here with you guys today, talking about something that is, I think, probably going to come off as a little bit controversial for some, not necessarily meant to be. If it goes that way, maybe it was meant to be said. These are the types of topics that we talk about here that are sometimes difficult to have, but this one I don't know that necessarily needs to be termed as or seen as difficult nor controversial. I just think it's going to go against the grain of the traditional, especially those of you that have been around personal development for a long time and are familiar with people like the great Tony Robbins. I'm going to challenge something today, perhaps a belief system you've had that can be very ineffective if you just sort of take the well-worn path that has been delivered in the personal development industry with the concept of why. Finding your why. And I pick on Tony Robbins out of respect. I'm not really picking on him, but I'm pointing to him because he has been a paragon of this concept of finding your why for a very, very long time. In fact, he, for one period of time, called himself the why guy. I'll give you some examples as to the reason I find this term why to be so ineffective, and then give you a different way of approaching it. In fact, what I have found to be way more effective for both myself and the clients and the people I've had the privilege to work with over the years. Let's get down to kind of the root of what your why is, or what it's projected to be. What do you suppose the term why implies when we talk about, hey, you got to find your why? And when you hear that or think that term, what comes to mind? What is your why? You can throw it in the comments if you want, for those of you watching this on YouTube. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Because a lot of times when people will answer that question when I ask it, either in person at a workshop or from stage, or anytime I'm working with clients, when I say, hey, when you think of your why, what comes to mind? For the vast majority, most people will come up with their kids, their family, their spouse, somebody close to them, a human being. Sometimes it's their dog or their cat, but generally speaking, their why is typically determined to be another person. That's how they approach their why when somebody says, find your why. And you hear this a lot in entrepreneur spaces, I think. Entrepreneurs are encouraged to find their why. Leaders are encouraged to communicate the why to their teams. And I have to say, as a leader, it's extremely important as part of your leadership to be able to convey what the why is, but maybe not use the term. The why is really oftentimes meant to be purpose, or perhaps the vision. And for those of you that have followed the True Driven podcast and followed me long enough, you know I talk about the big four: your values, your vision, your mission, and having a sense of purpose behind what you do. Even if you don't know what your purpose is, sometimes your purpose is something that takes you a lifetime to discover, and that's okay. If you don't know what your purpose is, it doesn't mean you're lost or you're not going to make it through life or have success in your business or your career. Sometimes it means approaching something with a sense of purpose. It's more of a way of being than something that you attain or something that you actualize. But when we talk about why, it's not even close to what the question implies. Now, years ago, I had a mentor who actually broke it down, and he talked about the 6 different types of questions. And if you think about it, there really are only 6 types of questions. There's a bazillion questions in the world, countless, really infinite numbers of questions, but really only 6 types of questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Makes sense. But here's the reality. If you really break it down, and this is what this mentor taught me, the concept of why is very past-based. So usually when you're asking the question, what's your why, you're talking about something in the present, or maybe even something you're building toward for the future. It's very hard to drive a high-performance vehicle looking through the rearview mirror unless, of course, you're backing up or checking your blind spot to make sure that there's nobody in the lane you're about to switch, or that you don't have a cop behind you, of course. I realize there's a reason for the rear view mirror, but if you ever look at a high-performance car, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Aston Martin, whatever it might be, you'll find that the windshield is disproportionately larger than the rear view mirror itself. And there's a reason for that. Because when you're going fast towards your objective, when you're traveling at a high rate of speed, you want to be able to see what's in front of you. What's behind you is more irrelevant at that point. And so often, as high performers, we have a tendency to live life in the rearview mirror. And the concept of the word why, or even the question why, or finding your why, can psychologically put you into reverse. It can cause you to have to live in the past, or more importantly, live in a place of excuses. What's your why? Well, it's my kids, or it's my wife, or it's my this. That's actually a who, by the way. Let's pay respect where respect is. And I'm not talking about the proper use of the word itself, but if I said, who are you doing this for? Energetically, it already feels much more powerful. If I say, what's your why? It's almost as if you have to explain it to me. Now think about it this way. When you were a kid, who mostly was asking you why? Typically, it was an adult. Why did you do that? Hey, can I have something to eat? Why do you want something to eat? And it always felt at the time that you were defending yourself, that you had to explain yourself, that you had to build a case for what it was you were asking for. Well, as an adult and as a leader, it's about showing up and being intentional and having a sense of purpose as you attack and get after what you want, not explaining what you want. Now, as a leader, we want to be able to communicate to our teams what it is we're doing. So when you ask the question, somebody asks you, what is your why? And you say, well, it's my kids. Well, what you're really talking about is who you're doing this for. You're building this business. You're building this career. You're building this fortune. You're on this path of this mission on behalf of other people. That's a very powerful place to be. That's a different type of posture, the posture of leadership. Better question would be, who are you doing this, or who might benefit from you building this thing or pursuing this dream? Who are you doing this for, in other words? But your why is really a what, if you think about it, what it is you want to achieve. But here's the thing. When we hear Tony Robbins or any of these other guys talk about it, that's actually what they're asking. Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek is another one. Simon Sinek actually has a book called Start With Why. And it's interesting because if you read the actual book and you go through it, he's never talking about why. He's talking about a series of whats. And at this point, you're probably saying, JT, this is semantics, dude. What are you beating up on these guys for? And how come you're making such a big case for it? I'm making a big case for it because thinking about something with a past tense or an energetic state of living in the past, having to defend the reason behind wanting to do it, is less effective than having a forward thinking and forward facing approach to the actual thing itself, the mission itself. We are on this path because is different than saying, well, I want this because. We're on this path and this is the path and here's the direction we're going, is more of the energy you give off when you talk about in a place, coming from a place of what. Now, I realize that for some people, this is a very difficult concept to get to, and it's going to be hard to cover in a one-way conversation like a podcast. Sometimes you have to have an interaction with people. And oftentimes you true drivens, when we get into the deep weeds of our work together, I will pull away from those things that are most important to you to find out what it is you actually want and what most people call their why. Especially if you're seeking that, if you're like, I'm not sure what my why is, let me give you a different approach to this, something that I think you're going to find to be way more effective to get to the root cause of, or the root of what you're actually asking about when you talk about your why in the first place. There's a few things that I have found through all the work that I've done with entrepreneurs and executives and athletes and top-level high-performing people throughout the course of my career that they are challenged by with this concept of why. Oftentimes, it misses the point of what's actually important to them, what it is they actually want to achieve. Well, what's your why? They start talking about people. They start talking about other people instead of themselves. They start thinking about things that are emotionally exciting, perhaps, or connected to, and that's great. That's a very valuable and important aspect to approaching this concept of finding your why. But it misses the mark. The other part about it is it doesn't create a sense of ownership on your part. The person driving the actual mission. That's important. If you don't own it, if you don't have a deep-seated personal connection to it, and it's more about other people, your spouse, your kids, whatever, husband, wife, it doesn't have the same power as if you have a sense of true, genuine ownership yourself. And that's oftentimes missed when we're going after this concept of finding your why. The other part about this that can be very slippery and frankly a little bit dangerous is the approach, the method by which the thing is gone after and chased after and pursued. The approach. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. If I said, hey, what's your why? And you said, my why is my kids. And I'm like, great. And what is it that you're here to build? And you said, I'm here to build my business. And I'm like, great. Well, what's one really important milestone that you want to achieve? I want to achieve $1 million. Maybe it's $1 million more than you have. You want to boost revenue by $1 million or get to your first $1 million for that matter. And I say to you, great. You probably live in or near a large city. Even if you're out in the rural community, you can find a large city. If you go down into the worst parts of the big city, you can likely find a drug dealer, somebody who will help you acquire a large amount of drugs, and then you could turn around and resell those drugs and make that $1 million. Obviously, most people will not want to do it that way. That is not the path. That is not the method by which they would want to achieve the thing that they're after. But that's not what we talked about, right? We asked, what is your why? My why is my kids. Well, what is it you're building this? What is it you're building? I'm trying to build this revenue. So it's very important that you're clear on the path of the actual way of doing it. Well, JT, that seems inherently obvious. Aren't we talking about my business? My point is this. How clear are you? You cannot take these things for granted. Clarity is not automatic. For a lot of people, clarity is not very natural. It takes time. It takes the discovery process of asking a lot of good questions, powerful and effective questions in order to get to a place of genuine clarity. So I want to give you 3 specific things that you can start working on right now, today, to get better clarity around this concept of what you've been calling your why, or what Tony Robbins or Simon Sinek or any of the other motivational or personal development gurus have tried to teach you at this point. These three things that I'm teaching you can be used for anything. It can be used for business. It can be used for fitness and health. It can be used for relationships. It can be used for athletics. Heck, you could even use it for your own spiritual pursuits. If you're trying to find your why, I want you to break it down into the three letters of the word why. W, H, and of course, Y. The W is what? The very first aspect is to get clear on what it is you actually want to achieve. Now, when I talk about your values, your vision, your mission, and your purpose, this is going to be key and essential, especially that Y part or the W part of what you want to achieve is probably going to fall in line with your vision and your mission, more than likely. Your vision and your mission are the big four. What is it you're here to achieve? Now, again, if you're looking to add revenue to your business, you're looking to launch a business, or maybe you're looking to launch a new initiative inside the company, whatever that thing might be, you have to be very, very concrete and clear as to what specifically it is. I've had a lot of people tell me, hey, I want to build financial freedom or time freedom. Those things are very nebulous and fuzzy. What does that even fucking mean? And most people actually cannot articulate it in their own words. So, this is your challenge when it comes to finding your why, if you want to call it that, is that first part is the what. What is it you actually tangibly are working to achieve? Now, I've heard lots of people talk about the damage done by having a specific goal in place, running a marathon, launching a business, making $1 million, whatever the thing is, as if to say that that is all there is to it. The what also implies what it will take of you. So you may say that you want to make your first million or your next million, or you want to launch this new business, but then what? What does that require of you? We talked about what the actual outcome is, but what does that mean? What does that require of you? You see, when we talk about your why, it's not just about the outcome that we're achieving and the whole reason for doing it. There also has to be a clear sense of what you must become in order to achieve it. Finding your why is a journey. Discovering what is a process. Being able to clearly define the mission itself, the target, and then be able to discuss in detail, specific detail, the different resources necessary, but also what your leadership will be needed, what of your leadership is going to be needed, what's going to be required of you skills-wise, commitment-wise, conviction, all of the things that go into the actual execution. Which actually brings me to the second point, and that is the H in the letter Y, or the word Y. The H is the how. Now, before I gave that kind of silly story, it's like, okay, if you want to make a few hundred extra $1,000s, then just go out and sell drugs. Well, naturally, that would get the job done if your mission is to make money, but that's not how you'd want to do it. The how is important because when we go back to the big four, now we're also talking about your values, how you want to go about doing it. But how much of what you do on a daily basis is something you're proud of? How much of it is things that you dread, things that pull away from your what you truly value? How much time do you invest doing that instead of doing other things that you'd rather be doing? And I get it. Sometimes as leaders, we all have to do things we don't want to do, don't love to do. That's called discipline, personal responsibility, and ownership. But overall, are you selling your soul for the outcome? How you are doing it is as important as what you are doing it, or who you're doing it for. What you're doing and who you're doing it for, I should say. So be very clear and concise on this, and ask yourself on a daily basis, especially for you business owners and builders, are you building your business in a method and in a way that lines up with your values? Is it lined up with the vision you have for your life overall? Or are you working against those things? Because if it turns into an arm wrestling match between your values and the vision that you have for your life, it's a fast road to burnout. It won't take long before you'll find yourself saying, you know what, fuck this, man, I'm out of this. And that's one of the biggest heartbreaks, and something that even some of the top level leaders have had the privilege of working with, battle with on a consistent basis. They don't love how they're doing it. The good news is that it does take time, it takes work, but there's a way to actually build around that. You can actually build a life and a business that you love, that you're proud of, something you're excited about, something that fires you up, that internal drive that true drivens naturally have. It's not a set it and forget it type of thing. And you can regain that if you've lost it. That's the good news. Finding your why is not the path. Finding the how and defining that how on your terms is. And it's a key and essential piece to it. So again, when we're talking about the word why, we break it down into those three elements, the W, H, and the Y. The W is the what. What is it you actually want to achieve? And the H is the how. But that third letter, Y, is not YY. It's actually stands for you. This is probably the most important part, and one part that I see a lot of leaders struggle with. As much confidence as it takes to build, as much frankly healthy ego that you need to actually succeed on a high level in business or life, there is an element where the humility can overtake and overshadow you as the actual driver of the mission. And what ends up happening is we sell ourselves short in the name of trying to look humble or trying to do it for other people. Well, my why is my wife and my kids. My why is my husband and my kids, whatever the thing is. Well, look, first and foremost, it has to matter to you. It has to be something you want. The great news is this: you can actually burn yourself out doing work for other people, or you can live a life that is fulfilling for you and for them. But it requires you to put you first, especially in the very beginning, when you are defining this silly thing we call the why. What you want, how you want to go about it, and is it yours? Are you truly driving this? Are you truly crafting this and authoring this amazing journey called life? When people talk about finding their why, they miss out on any one of these three things, sometimes all three things. And so my challenge to you today and every single day is to really question and audit yourself on this. Are you clear on what it is you actually want, what it is you are actually building, what you need to become in order to achieve the thing that you're working so hard for? The H is how. Now, this is important because if you're working the hours that you want, pouring into it, doing the methodology of it, then it's all about throwing gasoline on the fire. If you love putting the message out in a method that you're putting the message out, if you love leading your team in the method that you're doing it, if you love how you're showing up, then keep doing that. But if you can honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, I don't love how I'm doing that. I don't love how my approach is. I don't love how I address my team. I don't love how I see myself. I don't love how I show up to the mission. Then this is the time to make the pivot. And the good news is you don't have to pivot away from what you're trying to build. You're pivoting away from how you're building it. You start building it in a way that's much more aligned with your values, much more and aligned with the vision that you have for your life and the life that you're building for your family, your team, and whomever else is on the journey with you. That's literally how you actually end up having more purpose behind what you do. Well, I'd love to find my purpose, JT. Well, you look, the good news is you might or might not find it. And the good news is that you don't even have to. It's about how you show up. If you show up with a sense of purpose, then that's all there is. That's the great news. How you do anything can be indicative of how you do everything. It's possible. I don't believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything. But let's be honest. If you don't love what you're doing, maybe it's not the what, maybe it's how you're going about it. That's the reason that second element is so important. But the third element is critical. The third element is non-negotiable. Make sure you are building your business. Make sure you are pursuing your mission. Make sure you are building a vision that you own, that is yours. That's what the why in the word why actually represents. When you have these three elements in place, you'll actually succeed and achieve all the things that the big gurus talk about. And again, I love Tony Robbins. I'm going to be honest with you. I owe a great deal to Tony. He's taught me so many things. I've been through his programs like UPW and Date with Destiny and so on. And I've had the privilege of growing as a result of his training. So by no means is this an admonishment. In fact, if anything, this is honoring Tony. I wouldn't be where I am without Tony Robbins. Tony, I love you and I appreciate you. My take on what Tony teaches when he talks about finding your why is to find these three elements to anything you're doing in your business, your career, your fitness, your relationships, your life. Get clear on what you want. Get clear on how you want to approach it. And it's okay to modify that how as you go. But most importantly, make sure you own it. Make sure it is yours. The only issue I ever had with the concept of why is it has the potential to be so powerful to help you achieve everything you want out of your business, your career, or your life. But if misunderstood and if misapplied, it can cause you to spin out, burn out, and basically flame out. And eventually, pretty soon, you're just on the path to ruin. It's not about finding your why. It's about finding your what, your how, and making it yours. This whole concept of finding your why has been total bullshit forever. And the thing that most people don't get is that the actual pursuit of the word itself can sometimes drive very dangerous behaviors, ineffective behaviors that cause a lack of performance to help you even get further and further away from hitting your goals, your targets, and missing the big point in life in the first place. So stop trying to find your why and instead start finding these three elements. They are the things that will actually help you achieve everything you wanted from your business and your life. And more importantly, do it in a way that makes it feel great for you, makes it feel authentic for you, and aligns with who you truly are. That's what it's all about. It's not about finding your why. It's about finding your what, the how you want to do it, and making sure it's yours. All right, my friends, it's time to put this into action. It's about your what, it's about how, and it's about you. That is what why actually stands for. If you got some value from this, throw it in the comments. I want to know what you're learning from this and how you're going to apply it. Make sure you share this message far and wide. Subscribe, stay in the know so you'll be the first to know when I bring you new content, especially here on YouTube. And remember, no matter what course you fly in life, fly high, fly fast, fly far, stay driven.